This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So in case you were wondering, this is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole. I'll announce that again when we fix up the show. I'm here with Zach Louis and Jason Caldwell. And today what we're going to talk about in the first half and second half of the show is you got cramped because your family's in your house. We got some ways to get around that. But it fast degenerated when we were actually talking, even the pre-show, where we're kind of bantering back and forth, trying to get the technology back. Is there's a big trend that no one wants to speak about. They kind of push it under the rugs. And that is basically the aristocratic nature of a lot of magical styles. Like the aristocratic, and by aristocratic, I mean exactly the aristocratic roots of the most common magical styles that we have versus non-aristocratic styles of magic. We didn't think this was going to be about the show, but a lot of what we're going to talk about actually is about aristocratic magical styles. Not necessarily even, I don't even mean to say like racially white, because we can go back to Egyptian magic and see this was also ceremonial magic in Egypt. Out of the best anthologies we have is aristocratic.
Mm-hmm.
Choir, yeah. Zac, Jason, right? Like even certain constructors of the temples were aristocratic.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you take it all the way to Judaism, the whole construction of the temple and the Holy of Holies and all that jazz. It was the priesthood, the richest of the rich of the society.
Right. I mean, that supports a priest class pretty well. It supports a clergy class as a political movement, but it does not really support your individual magicians. And I mean, when we talk about ceremonial magic, I think Western ceremonial magic is probably about the worst aristocratic magic. When you actually read what you supposedly need, and we're going to, regardless of the books that currently say this is what you need, we're vehemently opposed to that. Mm-hmm. We usually say that. We have gotten real results without having gold or silver or any of that kind of stuff. You know, not to say those wouldn't be helpful if you have gold and you have that much money. Cool. Make a donation to the show right now.
All I need to summon a demon is a Sharpie marker.
I know. Right? That's not even that. Just a pencil. Not even that if you know the seal real well.
Yeah.
At work, I used to use this mirror. You can't see the size of this, but with my hand you can. By the way, this is a $2 picture frame from Walmart. But, you know, I could have spent a lot of money on a black mirror for a scrying mirror. But you notice this works pretty well for a scrying mirror. It cost me like $5.
Yep, a little bit of black spray paint on the glass.
To do that, this is how it came.
Oh, really? Nice.
Exactly. So at work, before I lost my work office due to COVID, I used to just do this to keep people in line at work, you know, certain goetic workings in the middle of the day, lunchtime, to change the outcomes of communications. There you go. But officially in ceremonial magic, you need 9 feet, plus an engraved mirror with all the stuff. That is crazy. But the more we talked about it, like these space issues come from aristocratic veins of magic. When we talk about Conjure, what do Conjure people do? Well, Conjure people go out in the backyard, put a rock down, make a lamp, possibly in their basement if they got one, or just right on the path, you know, right next to their house. They don't have any space at all, you know. Even like a little candle spell, like that gets a little more difficult now because of the rules of apartments and stuff like that. But still, that takes minimal space. You know, like Egyptian, I pointed it out, but there's also some sects in Hinduism that require enormous amounts of space. Jason correctly raised the issue of the Jewish temples require enormous amounts of space to actually do not the magic, but the religious service. I mean, maybe we're getting into a little bit of the dichotomy between actual magic and religious service, but I think that gets a little confused. You know, it gets confused in the literature. It gets confused in even modern occult books. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I absolutely gets confused, man. I think that back then, magic and religion or ceremony, they were more intertwined.
Right. I mean, there was this period of time where politically the priest class injected itself, and we could say this is true for right now, because you already have Catholic priests and, you know, Christian priests inject themselves in the process between you and divinity, or you and magic, you know, whatever you want to call it, and then they control the gate. They basically say, this is how it can happen. This is how miracles can come about. This is how prayers can get answered. And they're putting a barrier in there. And some of that barrier has to do with these kind of aristocratic space issues. You know, nobody has, I have 9 feet that I could do a circle and do a classical ceremonial magic thing. And you know what? You know, there's been some things where I talked about Zac about maybe in the Wuji Zen clinic, we could set up a Poke Runyon style altar.
Yeah.
Right, and put it up there and do, you know, classical ceremonial magic from the OTA, which is not the OTO. That's Pope Runyon's order, which I'm actually a part of. His rituals are very beautiful, actually. Very beautiful to see, but you need a whole garage for them.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a whole garage to actually set this up. And if it's certain times of the year, you need to have a garage that has heating and cooling. Not just heating, not just heating. 90 degrees, you can't really do ceremonial magic in robes. It's really hard. Even in aristocratic times, they would have spaces that were potentially stone spaces underground to do this sort of stuff. And people don't realize that a lot of the ceremonial magics that we have comes from the Catholic Church. They certainly had places underground that were cooler. Point at which you just can't do that style of magic in its original form. Now, the positive side of that is I think we can both agree. All three of us can agree. Those conventions are BS.
Yes.
Absolutely.
There's ways to get around the space issues, even in ceremonial magic. There's ways to do angel summonings without having $1,000 tools that you have to custom engrave, which again, time, by the way, is also an aristocratic constraint nowadays. If you think listen to some of the ceremonial magic podcasts or ceremonial magicians who are, this has got to be classically exactly done, and it takes me 20 hours to do one. I need to take like not even 20 hours. It took me like 15 days. And I had to take off work several days to carve this exactly correctly. What the hell? You had to take off how many days to do a simple magical operation?
Yeah, I mean, that is a luxury piece unto itself. I mean, angel work.
Luxury piece unto itself. That is saying I have so much privilege. I can take days off straight away for me to be able to do this. It says that anyone who I hear that from, they're not going to poo-poo one word iota to me about how poor they are, because if they say that, I'm going to say bullshit. Like, at least acknowledge that you have some privilege there. You can take off days of work. You can carve this stuff. You don't have to have a second job. You have the workshop to carve this. And not only do you have that, you have the resources to get exotic materials from my perspective. And you're going to poo-poo and say that, like, yeah, well, this is what is necessary. And this is easy to do. It's just, no way. No way.
Yeah, it's a complete luxury on that. I mean, hell, I've done stuff on the subway.
I know
That's limited as it gets for space.
it is. That's as limited as it gets on the space or money. Like this is kind of a thing that I keep seeing, and actually, like we're going into this aristocratic magic versus not. The dice has been thrown with COVID. You know, I think what we see soon is people saying this kind of aristocratic stuff like you should go get a scrying mirror that you spent 30 days scraping all this stuff. It's gone. 30%, what, like 15% of the people now are actually unemployed in the States. I don't know how many in Canada. That's not going to come back. People aren't going to have the kind of resources to throw at that type of magic. Fortunately, like as we're alluding to, you know, all this stuff, when you really read that and really think about what's being said, it's probably not necessary. It's nice correspondences, but it's correspondences you can get around.
Mhm.
I think some simple ways to do that, like one of the ways that I think Zach, for a lot of years, we were using briefcase altars.
Oh yeah, I was using briefcase altars. I was doing stuff while I was walking. I still do. Well, I did a lot of stuff on the subway. Hell, I do stuff in Ubers, like space. It's a piece sometimes, especially when you're busy and time strapped.
Right, exactly. Altar in a briefcase is interesting because you can actually have an ancestor altar, or you can have even ceremonial magic altar. Like, remember, $5 folds flat, goes into an altar. You can be sitting there. You open it up, set it up, tea light. You're good to go. Right now, then you got to work on some other things to actually make sure that actually works. Right, because in classical ceremonial magic, and you can do this, and it's enjoyable sometimes, as me and Jason know. Like, if you've been following us ever, like before we took our little break from being in the public, we would go in the garage, draw circles, take all day. You know, when we go do voodoo rituals, we'd be like, you know, we would draw out the bebes for the whole day. It's fun times, right? That's more like because we have the luxury of time, and we have the luxury of making it pretty, but we're not really making it pretty because we have to. We're sort of making it pretty because we're snots. We're snobs, right? Wouldn't you say that's right, Jason?
Absolutely. And I would also say that, look, I don't really like the word privilege, but that is some of the privilege that we don't have to work on weekends, and sometimes we can get together and do things like that.
Yeah, well, when we didn't have to work on weekends, and then I started my second job.
Well, there's that. You do weekends, so there you go.
Exactly. You know, so we would spend a whole bunch of time, and you can do that, and that does add to the ritual. So it's not like we're saying none of that does anything. It's just a lie. We're saying it's not necessary because you can then do the same thing where you build up your auric shell, so there's a barrier between you and the spirit world, through concentration exercises as opposed to drawing a circle. And that's actually a useful technique. Once you get that down, sure, you could be in your office summoning spirits into a scrying mirror. Why not? And actually, like, we should do that exercise real fast to give people some value add, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Run that. You can run that. Psychic Shielding 101 by Zach Louis.
So, I mean, this is where we're going to have everyone put your feet on the ground and relax and breathe.
Hopefully you are not currently driving an automobile or otherwise watching this.
Yes.
This way, driving an automobile. Maybe they could be, but yeah, but hopefully not.
Right. So, I want everyone to just concentrate on their feet for just a few moments. And as you're breathing and relaxing into your feet, with all 5 senses, I want you to imagine that there is an egg around you. As you breathe in, you're going to imagine you're pulling up energy from the earth and putting it through the egg around you as if you were in it. And every time you inhale, it gets strengthened. When you exhale, you even get stronger. So you're using your breath here to strengthen and reinforce this basic shield around yourself as an egg or circle. Make sure it goes under your feet also, as if the eggshell was going underneath. So that is a very quick, earth type shield. I mean, I know Jason's used this one before too, right?
And you can like keep building that up over time. So if you did this for like a good hour, it'd get stronger. If you did it a half hour a day, it'll get stronger and stronger and stronger. So I'm not saying that you instantly replace the stuff, but this is what the core of the lesser banishers, so the pentagram, should be building up as well. At least they wouldn't say it that way, but I really think so. If you combine it with other cleansing techniques and you do it regularly, there'll come a point where you'll notice that people won't violate your personal space either. And that's probably a good time where you're it's strong enough that you can reasonably do a summoning. If people will tend to avoid the edge of that space unless they're intimate partners or friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good one. Good criteria for when your own psychic shielding is good. What do you think, Jason?
Absolutely.
People just, at the point at which you get to that point that it's affecting people, it's probably strong enough that it will be a deterrent. And realize, if you're not comfortable with what you're summoning, you probably shouldn't be summoning it.
Oh.
I mean, it seems obvious, but a lot of people will summon stuff that totally terrifies them just because it's like, I want to get money, or I want to get a new girlfriend or something. It's like, you really have to be okay with what you're summoning. Like if it gets into you're starting the summoning and it's not feeling real good at all, you got to ask harder questions about this. Like, what about me is rejecting this, or why am I having issues with this before you continue? You might be able to get around the space issues with mental construct, but you can't get around it listening to yourself at that point and trying to figure out what's going on. It's not always obvious either. Like, you could be summoning a spirit for wealth, and then, you're fighting your own wealth demon that's trying to make you sick, and you have to kind of use divination tools to kind of suss out what the hell is going on with me that I got sick in this ritual. Was the spirit making me sick? Was the energy too odd? Was the vibration of the spirit? I would take it a good sign if I actually got sick in a long ritual. At least it means I did something, and then I would analyze what went wrong. Why did I start feeling ill? Unless you're summoning a spirit that's supposed to cause other people to get sick, in which case then you need to just strengthen your psychic shield. Just be like, okay, good one, man. Good one. I started feeling sick, and now I'll work on getting my shell. There's a whole bunch of techniques in hands like Chaos Magic that about kind of ways to psychic your shield. A lot of the stuff that Zac teaches in the Qigong classes you're on, it's about psychic shield. Once you get around all the formality of the of ceremonial magic, there's lots of ways to actually build up your psychic shield. But even that, in the lesser banishment ritual pentagram, you can do parts of that even in a constrained space just by strongly visualizing the materials over and over and over again, and understanding what the correspondences actually, the effect that the correspondences actually have on your body. Like, so if you've done the lesser banishment ritual once, you can build it up as an internal construct. Jason would say this astral magic, but I don't quite think it's astral magic in the classic sense of you're not going somewhere, but it is like inner temple stuff. And if you understand what the effect of the incenses are on you, and you've taken really good notes at each step of the lesser banishment ritual pentagram, for instance, you could certainly build the mental effects and anchor them to each step of the lesser banishment ritual pentagram. So you don't necessarily have to have. You could actually do the lesser banish reversal of the pentagram with much more props, and then get the anchors down, and then internalize that. And we're gonna the second half of the show. We're gonna talk about vocalizing without vocalizing, or intoning and getting the effects from a vocalized thing without necessarily vocalizing. Because, well, Jason doesn't have this problem now, and I don't have this problem. At times in Ohio, I think we both had problems where we could have the police called on us if we were doing magic that was a little bit too scary.
Sure.
I think that's fair to say. Like now, we both have houses, so we're sort of doubly privileged. But there was times where if you're in an apartment in New York City and you have a hyper-vigilant situation, different is not good, considered okay in some... New York City is probably okay. They'll be okay with that and there. But certainly there's been times, in Columbus even, that I was like, yeah, maybe this is a problem. You know? So we show you how to, in the second half of the show for the sponsors, we're going to talk about how to intone without intoning. We're not going to do that with classic ceremonial magic, but you can use the tools that we're going to show you how to do that with ceremonial magic.
So if you want access to that, where do they go, Zach?
They will go to the Teachable link, which we will put in the chat box for people, and it will also have it on the description for the when we put this as a recording.
That was almost a perfect sales pitch there, Zach.
How much is it going to cost them, guys?
$10 USD, and that counts all the back recordings we have also, so you get all that access for every recording we do after the show for $10 a month.
$10 a month Patreon, correct?
Teachable, not Patreon.
We didn't go with Patreon because Patreon gives you almost nothing.
Yeah, we did that analysis, and it was like, nope.
Patreon gives you the fact that you can say you have a Patreon account. Teachable actually lets us store the files there. And we already had Teachable for the shapeshifting class, and we're like, okay, let's just use what we already paid for. Yeah, I agree with Carrie. Probably no one will call the police on you in New York City, because New York City is already pretty weird and cool. Probably no one will call the police on anyone in Toronto either, because they're just like, whatever. It's just,
yeah, they're pretty much like, whatever. I mean, shit.
That's out, right? Though, if you live in Oklahoma, maybe not.
Yeah.
I had the police called on me for magic rituals before. And it wasn't that we were too loud. It wasn't a noise complaint. It was actually like, I think there's something in the devil. That's got to be illegal, right? No, actually, it's not. It's called freedom of religion.
Where'd you say that happened at?
That happened when I was in Columbus once. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you said something about Oklahoma. Like, what?
In Oklahoma.
Could be in Oklahoma.
Right. So, and that's the also thing about some of this stuff. Like ceremonial magic, you can sort of use the tools of psychology and NLP to build constructs that work as well as the tools. That isn't to say that incense doesn't have its own kick. And that doesn't say if you put the circle down with herbs, which isn't classical ceremonial magic actually either, the way we were doing some of the circles. What is the classical ceremonial magic? I mean, geez, there's like every book has a different story about how to do this, but we would add herb mixtures with the chalk and then draw it out. Actually, we'd do the circles more like we do veves. Not quite with corn powder, but we would lay them out very similarly. But that's a whole bunch of layering that we're adding to a physical talisman. We're well aware that you don't need that. So even that's not classical. Also, other things you can do if your psychic shields are not that good, you can, but you have some more resources as far as cash, and you can afford a robe. You can also use, not baths, but you can use herbs to kind of wash the robes with, and blessed herbs that when you're wearing the robes, it's extra protection because the herbal magic will get in herbs. And all you have to do basically is you do have to divine that to figure out what will work. usually like actually work well if you're confident in the spirit. So you used advantageous herbs in a spirit in the same planetary sphere as this entity you're summoning for protection on that sphere. You know, unless you're really not confident, then you can use adversarial herbs. So like, what I mean by that is if you're summoning an entity that you're not really sure of and you're really kind of, you know, you need to work with it for some reason and you're really not sure at first, you could break the resonance by using martial herbs in your circle, right? So, but that's if you're really not sure about what you're calling forward, right? That'll actually limit the power that you can actually express if you do that to your robes or in your circle to the entity, right? Because you're now out of resonance purposely to try to summon something, which means you have to be able to hold. Another trick that we want to always kind of talk about is like you're holding one thing in your mind, but you're able to project another thing as a skill that is usually necessary that a lot of the classical aristocratic methods of ceremonial magic in different cultures kind of ignore because they have so much space that you're setting it up in layers over days, right? So like you have a consecrated altar that you're doing maybe as the last thing, you know, you have a consecrated circle, which you're setting up over days, you know, so you don't necessarily have to hold two things in mind. You're just able to kind of go in and do the work you have to do, but you did all that work ahead of time. So that I really feel is an aristocratic use of time. Like you have so much time, you could spend 3 days on a circle. What do you guys feel like, you know, like, but I think the robe thing is one way that you can kind of cheat the 9 feet space issue right off the bat. Like you just wash the robes, let them air dry and then but then still, we're still down to a few hours, right? To let it air dry if it's cold.
Yep.
But you can use that multiple times. It's not like you have to do it once and then you're like, oh, this is no longer good. But if you're summoning certain spirits, like, and you're similar, but they're advantageous, the way that the spirit will react, the negative sides of that spirit, if you're working on the planetary side of things, will kind of be filtered by your positive herbs. You know, whereas, so if it's like a positive wealth expansion spirit, you might have herbs tied to Jupiter that are positive, so that you're kind of filtering out the negative sides of that, a negative entropic spirit that you might be calling on Jupiter. That makes sense to both of you, right? Makes sense to everyone in the chat room?
Absolutely.
Yep, totally makes sense. And then, I mean, that leads up into the next piece where, I mean, you can start layering that into paintings.
Yeah, paintings is great. You know, that's the thing. Well, that also requires some space too. But you can do progressive evocations into a painting to get a talisman that you can call forward a spirit with almost no space. And you don't need, at the point you've worked so hard to make that painting, usually, again, but now we're talking about the aristocratic nature of time. Paintings take time. But at that point, you can get the space down to almost nothing because you've worked through all that in the process of building a talisman so you can call forward a spirit into the painting with almost no, you're not really concerned about it because you already established a relationship with the spirit. You know, you've established all that kind of stuff ahead of time through the act of the painting. Again, you need probably a month to do a painting. If you're me or Jason, maybe some people could do that like sooner, but so that's again a trade-off. Another one that if you can't afford robes, you can always just do a cotton robe and basically bless that and tie that around you, kind of simulating an actual circle, is something that we found useful as well. You know, of course, that's only to augment what we're saying about the psychic shielding, right? Like this is when you're still building your shield, you're not really confident about it. You know, once you have a confidence and rigor in the shield, like a lot of this falls over. It either, at that point, it becomes things to add to the ritual, to add to your experience of the ritual, your enjoyment of the ritual in a way. When we start talking about enjoyment, we are talking about, the word Jason doesn't want to use.
Privilege.
It is kind of, right? At that point, you don't have to do ritual work to get results right then and there. You've got a few days to actually set everything up and make an experience for yourself.
Right.
It's a lot of death imagery at your house, my bud.
These are times of death.
Man. Jeez. Just jeez. Baphomet, it's B, and you got the skulls out, you got everything. Just, it's all good. One of the things, though, another traditional thing that is very traditional, but not in ceremonial magic, is to hide the spirits you're working with. So if you know anything about voodoo, when Catholics came to Haiti, they would often mask the Loa, and often in similar sister traditions like the Orisha masks Catholic icons. So it's like one thing doesn't mean exactly what you think. So people would come to the house and say, "Oh, you're okay. You're a good Catholic. You got all these Catholic icons. That's fine. That's fine." This is also if you're in a very, very constrained place, like maybe you're in a situation, lots of people lost their job. Maybe even people are like 30, have to go back to their parents' house and they're fundamental Christians. And, what are you going to do? Well, we know, the Baron and the cross, cemetery and the cross work well as a substitute. You're not playing to a Christian God with that. You're playing to a Lord of Death, basically. But, other things, simple things like that are good substitutions, I think, Jason, you were before show talking about a whole bunch of non-denominational tools that you have that you just kind of set it up artistically, but they don't look like what they represent. Although clearly, where you're at right now with Baphomet, that represents what you actually wanted to represent.
Yep, exactly. I got the privilege of, I've got this house, so I could do whatever the hell I please, but we don't have a ton of space, so we kind of put our magical stuff out and about throughout the house as decor.
But even then, if you couldn't, you have previously used non-denominational tools to represent or stand in for another thing.
Absolutely.
Why don't you give us some examples of that?
Well, it's the old classics, like using Catholic saints to represent Loa and things like that.
We covered that. But realistically too, like one yellow candle can be representative of how many different entities, right?
Certainly. I've burnt candles that had no actual iconic. I'm not going to say that right. I had no pictures on my candles, just colors.
Yeah, exactly. And likewise, what entity do you think that thing behind me represents? Are you guys sure? You guys should actually know, but that's okay.
I don't know what you set that one up for, so I'm just going to leave it be.
That's the spirit of my tree that I lost.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Exactly. But it could be anything, right? It's non-determinational. A lot of these tools, my dog's going crazy, so now I'll get all the hate mail from my dog going crazy. Oh, you can't audio edit out the dog? No, I really can't. It's really hard to audio edit out a dog.
Yeah.
But, that's the thing, a lot of the tools, what's a key? Well, a key can be a decorative key that just sits on your thing. So it's like if you're in an environment that you have no space and people are nosy, you don't have privacy, there's a lot of ways you just got to be a little clever, right? You know, a key could be for Legba, a key could be for Hecate, a key could be for other entities. You know, if you have people who, maybe not your parents, but other people in an apartment who object to sorts of things because they want to do that. Not everyone's living situations okay. You know, instead of incense, which is also something that requires space usually, you can use essential oils, which usually will be more okay. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things you can do with that, with essential oils, instead of getting a diffuser, is you can take a little bit on your fingers and put them right underneath your nose, right? So that they don't spread out through the whole house or where you're doing. But you get the same effect. You can actually mix an oil too with essential oils or fragrance oils and do exactly the same thing if it's not toxic. Don't do this if it's toxic. You know, or you put a drop right underneath, right here, you know? And when you breathe in, you just breathe in through your nose and you're like, you get the effects without everyone else around you getting the effects. Right? You can use incense, like you can't use incense that way, but clearly that's the same as using incense. You're triggering things in your mind, but you aren't necessarily imposing the space on anyone else who might object. Those are simple things, but they work very, very well. You know, not all essential oils can you put a drop on your skin without actually having it hurt a little. So if you're using cinnamon, you should cut that before you put that underneath your nose.
Yeah, melon oil beneath your nose, okay?
That's the problem with albumelon oil is basically cinnamon. It's cinnamon again. Like cinnamon oils, unless you built up a really good tolerance for cinnamon, it's still like that's gonna hurt. If you put it up here on your third eye, that's okay. But then if you do what all of us always do, which is you touch anything else sensitive, it's pain. You get it in your eye or other sensitive areas of your body, it's pain. It's pain. It's just pain. I'll leave it at that. But usually if you wash your hands really thoroughly, as soon as you put it on, you're okay. And some of those are, like thieves oil, that's another strong one. Like if it's cut, you'll still get the effects because remember that's supposed to trigger things in your brain right off the bat. The energy will be there. It'll have the right effect even if you put it right under your nose. Some people, for cinnamon's particularly a bad one, but you know, you use a sveta, that's another one that's rough. Tasty in Indian food, not so great to smell when you're actually doing anything with it. Oh. Demon be gone. Oh, then your whole house smells like rotten feet. That's one of the few herbs actually that tastes good, but when you smell it, it's horrible.
Yep.
Most herbs, like either it smells good and it tastes good, you know, it's not like you have one whole sense that disagrees with the other whole sense. And then when it's cooked, it's layered with stuff that masks its smell right from the start. So it's a weird herb that actually is tasty that smells so bad.
Oh, that's durian fruit, right?
Yeah, durian fruit's like that too. See, Jeffrey tastes good but smells bad. I'd agree with that. Kimchi tastes good and it smells bad. I think that's true.
That it does.
I think I would use kimchi for a souring spell. I think that's fair.
It's totally fair, especially like souring with some spice to it.
Yeah, like, you know, as if I had vinegar with some cayenne. Yeah. I'd use that for a substitute there. Yeah, definitely. What are some other things we can think of? Like, I mean, moving in directions in plain sight. How you actually do stuff on the subway, though, that takes a little bit of extra effort.
Well, that's a little extra mental control, and that gets into body magics, right?
This is also the thing. Like we're not talking. The hard side of this is we're saying sure you can get around the space issues, but you can't be lazy about it either. Like that's what we're like saying. They're like, well, yeah, sure, it's not going to impede you, but honestly speaking, the same amount of work to get ceremonial magic working classically is the same amount of work to get the internal tools built. It's just there isn't going to be a not working just because you have all the $5,000 of gold or special tools to get that ceremonial magic to work. I guarantee it's not going to work if you just buy your way in. What do you think, Jason? Will it work?
You can't just buy your way in. You can't just have the pretty pictures and the proper circles and the proper wands and daggers and whatever. Even if you had all the nice, pretty stuff, you still got to put the work in to make magic effective, right?
You mean it's not like Harry Potter?
Well, even in Harry Potter, they're working at it. Look like they're like clearly practicing the spells for hours and hours and hours.
Clearly.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Jeffrey's like, they had to go to school. Like, we watched them practice and say spells. Like, how many times do they screw up the spells?
Right, and this is the type of training that everyone has to do.
But no one wants to do that. That's the issue. Like, you know, like, that's the issue. No, like, I mean, it's easy to say, like, we're saying, yeah, you have to actually internalize the tools. And once you have to be like, internalizing the tools, you're doing this work, maybe a little bit more work to strengthen your psychic shields and get the internal constructs down. But, you know, and so that way your energy is correct when you're doing the ritual, and your focus is correct, and what you're focused on, vibrations are correct. But, like, isn't it easier if we just go, hey, pay me $5,000 to get me these tools and it'll work? All right, Maggie's comment that you can't learn to ride a bike is doubly good. Like, you can't learn to ride a magical train without putting your body into it. Like, and so it's doubly. Her example is you can't learn to ride a bike by a book. Mm-hmm. You have to process it in your body, fall off and scrape your knees in the process. That's doubly true for magic. If your body doesn't have, if you're not getting a reaction while you're doing a magical ritual, it's not working. Wait, hold on a second.
Uh-oh, what's he going after? What's he going after?
Prove me wrong.
And that is your segment of Prove Me Wrong today.
Right. If you're not getting a magical, if your body's not reacting to the magic work you're doing, you're not doing anything. It's wishful thinking. Prove me wrong. You guys going to at least say something in support of that? Jeez.
We're shaking our heads.
I'm just,
oh, good.
Come on now, he's right.
You should always, like, that's the first stage. And that's how you get this stuff to work without space. You realize your body's having a reaction. If your body's having a reaction, good, bad, indifferent, probably something's happening. Now, I don't want anyone to make any claims because they feel something and all of a sudden, you know, they've been blessed by spirit. That's a little too extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if you have visions of spirits, you should be suspect.
You should always be suspect because your subconscious is very powerful.
It's even worse than that, I think. Like, once you start going into, like, oh, there's sugar plums, and I forgot the exact phrase from the 12 Days Before Christmas. Jeez.
Don't know.
I don't know. With sugar plums and dates and stuff, and everything's great with the spiritual world. I can tell you how special you are. You're probably in trouble. You're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I really think that, like, because anytime that you start hearing how special you are, that's what you want to hear. And that's usually the spirits don't tell you that. Like, when you get a little further, that's not usually what they say. You know. You know. So effort, sweat, blood, whatever trials. You still have to have the energy exchange. Is that privilege? Probably not. I mean, if you're working 3 jobs, I think the spirits are actually more making authentic contact with them. Like, you still have to at least put in 10 minutes, right? Something. But I think they respond, like, if your situation is such that it's coming from the right place. I think there's an axiom in Hinduism too, like in the age of darkness, which clearly now there's no doubt that we're in, that any sincere prayer will be answered. I think once you learn to break through the noise, you just have a sincere prayer, that could be enough. That's getting to that place. It might only be 5 minutes if you have kids, multiple jobs. It might be 5 minutes after your shift before you go to the next job, but that's still a sincere prayer. And it may have more weight if you can at least just get the focus down. Because they can, if it's authentic, it's not authentic. I don't know how to say it. I mean, you guys know what I'm getting at? like,
Well, genuine, like it's basically coming from the right place.
Yeah, right. You know, like maybe you're not asking to own a, $1 million home. Maybe you're just asking to be able to sleep more. Make a couple more dollars an hour. I think in a lot of cases, when it comes from that kind of right place, and you get some of the basic techniques down, which that does take some time and privilege to get down. Effort on the front end, but when you're in those situations, the best time to actually work through that is when you're in good situations. It's like you're building up a bank of the skills for when you're not in such good situations. Certainly when I've been not in good situations, that bank of skills that I correctly probably had the privilege to work on then came through to basically make it so that when I actually had to do prayers in 10 minutes and make sure shit happened, it was coming from the right place, and I would get the results.
Oh, it's like martial arts. You train so you can defend yourself, but you hope you don't have to defend yourself.
Right. But the idea is you train so much that if someone actually throws a punch at you, you could do that in a split second. But you train for hours and hours and hours. I hear a knocking at the door.
That was some spooky shit.
Really?
Yes.
That was on your end, right?
No.
On my end, I think the neighbors are doing construction.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I was like, okay. Did we just have a random knock in the middle of our show? Because I think no one is around.
Oh, no, now Maggie's fucking with me.
Nice. Pray for your boss to recognize the value of PPE and sick leave. I'll be honest, I would bind my boss to understand recognition of the value of sick time. In fact, I did. Zac was there.
Yes, I can verify.
I mean, that's just common sense. If people are going to not use common sense, all bets are off. I think some of the other things that we could talk about is less ceremonial magic, but you can adopt this in ceremonial magic, and we've done this to great effect. But Conjure does this all the time. Live things in you. You can bless your food to have magical effects. And you can do that while you're cooking. So kitchen witchery, I mean, I know that sounds weird in our general stereotypes to hear Andrieh talk about kitchen witchery, but I do kitchen witchery a lot. So Zac, we make teas, we make food with certain ingredients to cast magical effects into us, into our body that remedies out. It's easy to do this planetary magic too. Herbs often have a herbal correspondence. So if you make the herbal correspondence for the intention you have, you can just do everything in the kitchen, right over the saucepan. You're kind of praying over the saucepan. And like I said, the second part of the show, we're going to talk about how to intone without intoning. Nobody's going to know if you're intoning repetitively over the saucepan over and over and over to try to bring, let's say, Venusian energies into your life, or just the martial energies to get vitality, any kind of combination of the herbs, and then you're drinking a tea. How are they going to know? They ain't going to know.
Yeah, they're going to know. I mean, this is where it goes back to, like, Maggie, I think, said something about instant magic earlier, which we didn't reply to. But yeah, in an Uber, I remember I was like dead tired, having 3 hours of sleep, and I did that with instant coffee.
I
The coffee.
He just said what we had an idea for the next show, but I think Jeff P's idea for the next show is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think that is it.
Your next show on how to get your boss to give magical protection beer. A whole show on doing that. Just on the second hour, we'll show you how to summon the spirit to do just that. There you go. That's what the sponsors get. We listen to them.
Yep. Yes, we do. So if you haven't signed up, do sign up and be a sponsor. Only $10 a month.
There you go. The other thing, I can't really stress enough about this food technique. It works great because it works on you. So when you change yourself, you're often changing the world. It's like a true axiom of hermeticism. Literally, I was listening to Gorija today. It's like, and that's a death metal band. It's like, when you change yourself, you change the world. It's awesome. Death metal band. And I mean, the food thing is easy. Like if you need more energy, you can spice your food. Certain hot things, right? Venusian food, all that kind of stuff. That's easy. We could do a whole show about that. But you can look up the correspondences. Of course, when you're working with the herbs for food, make sure they're not toxic. Look up their toxicity. That's what the internet. Use the internet for something other than porn, right? That information's all out there on the toxicity of things, on different herbs and different things like that.
I ate henbane for breakfast.
Sure you did, dude. You wouldn't be doing the show right now if you ate henbane for breakfast. Yeah, no. You wouldn't be listening. You wouldn't even be on the show. We'd be like,
The show.
he's in the hospital. How's it? What? What do you mean? For poison? COVID? What? How did that happen? What do you mean he ate henbane for breakfast?
And please, everybody listening, that was a fucking joke. That's not the same as shooting up Lysol.
Or bleach.
Don't drink a henbane tea. Is there anything else we have to add as disclaimers as we end the show today? Jeez.
I'm just going to say this. Everybody's responsible to try to raise their IQ a little bit during the corona pandemic. Please.
How would they do that, Jason?
How would they do that?
Read a motherfucking book. Any book.
That's a tribute to our old co-host Al. Shared this video with us. Read a motherfucking book. He showed a video with all of us that we know. Everyone. So it's a tribute to him. Al comes back to the show again. Reference back to Al. Classic. Very classic. Well, this is a good time to pause the show, take a 5-minute bio break. So for today's second half of the show, if you're not a sponsor already, the link will be in there, but you can go to Wuzhizhen and just click on the links to the Wuzhizhen to find the sponsorship thing. We'll have it in the show notes as well. If you're a sponsor, we do private magical, not private, it's semi-public magical teaching every other week. Today's second private magical training going to be on intoning without intoning. So what we're going to cover is basically how to do some basic Hindu mantras, just to use that as an example, and then move into sigilized mantras that that you can make for yourself. That's what you can do on the train and other places very, very easily. And we're going to try to get the vocalization and the non-vocalization to get at the same level of energy effect through some tricks. And that's what we're going to cover, which should open it up to everyone. But as usual, take a 5-minute bio break. Go do what you got to do. We want to thank everyone who was watching on YouTube, which is a few people watching right now, and everyone who came to the free part of the Zoom. Thank you very much. I think I know who everyone who's the sponsors are. So thank you very much. Stay around. I'm going to stop the recording. Let's take a bio break. I'm out of coffee. You want me to have coffee. And then we'll come right back. And you'll be entertained with a serenade from Jason Caldwell. Maybe not. Have a good night, everyone. Stay safe. especially now that things are probably prematurely opening up. Stay real safe, stay safe and well. Take the precautions in this COVID apocalypse. This is Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole. Have a good night.